But we back at it with another video, following through with a video that I thought I was gonna make on my last video, which is basically, excuse the noise in the background, but basically who can be seen from which house in astrology, basically, in terms of derivative houses. We're gonna look at different people, like in family, different people you may know, and who could be seen in terms of their energies within your birth chart. So with that being said, in a video before the last on which house represents the father and the mother in a birth chart or in astrology, we talked about how the fourth house right here, you see the number 4, the fourth house represents the mother, right? And I showed examples of and readings basically how that resonated with the person or with a couple people. And then the 9th house represented the father, right? So we got to talk about which house is going to represent other people, basically, right? So let's start with siblings, right? Normally siblings will be seen from your 3rd house, so this is the area you want to look for. But we want to be specific. So if you're a person and you have a younger sister or brother, youngest sibling, basically, they will be seen from the 3rd house. So this is going to be your first youngest sibling, right? And this is the 3rd house again, right? 3rd house. So your first youngest sibling will be seen from the 3rd house. Now, whenever we're talking about certain people, it's always going to be the other house or every other house that's going to indicate the next in order, right? So say if you have another younger sibling after this first youngest sibling, right, in terms of seniority, that would be seen from the 5th house. So this would be, the 5th house would be your second younger sibling if you have one. And then also, you also got to flavor in, of course, the planets. If you see any planets in these houses, this will also denote their energy as well too. Just as an example. So if you have a 3rd younger sibling, say if you like elder, one of the oldest ones, or the older sibling, excuse me, not the older sibling, the older, the eldest of your siblings, hypothetically speaking, and say if you had a 3rd younger sibling, it'd be seen from the 7th house. So this would be the 3rd younger sibling. Alright, then we go so on. So you see how we basically from the 3rd house to the 5th house to the 7th, we basically skipped every other one, every other spot. If you have a 4th youngest sibling, maybe you got a lot of siblings or something, Of course it's the father as well too, but this will also represent if you have a 4th younger sibling. Alright. And then so on and so on. So if you had a 5th younger sibling, it'd be seen from the 11th. If you had a 6th, from the 1st, right? And so on. So those are younger siblings. Now, if you have a older sibling, you always want to start with the 11th house. So this would be like your eldest sibling, your eldest, basically, if you have a couple older ones. So 11th house. And we're always going, in terms of the order, we're always going to go counterclockwise. So you're going to go in this manner, basically, as this is the order from house 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 12. 12 signs, 12 houses, right? So, yeah, this would be your eldest sibling, older sibling, basically, but eldest sibling, right? And then say if you have another older sibling, but they're the next one in line in terms of seniority under this sibling, go to the 1st house. So we put eldest sibling, then we can put 2nd. I'm gonna put oldest sibling, right? And then you so on, you know what I mean? So if you had a 3rd older sibling in terms of seniority, then you would look at the 3rd house. So this could be 3rd older sibling. This would be the 3rd house, right? So again, you just continue on, basically, if you had a large family. So, let's talk about spouses, you know what I mean, marriage partners, things of that nature. Always look at the 7th house. 7th house is going to be the first marriage. Now, if you get married again, if it doesn't work out, God forbid, you're going to go up to the 9th house. Remember, it's every other one. So from the 7th house, skip a space, go to that 9th house. This would be your second marriage or spouse. Alright, second marriage One thing I want to note is that I've also seen that with studying energy that the person doesn't necessarily for them to be considered like your spouse or your marriage partner. It's not always written in stone like, okay, well, y'all got actually married on paper and y'all signed a contract in terms of getting married. I've seen if people are actually embodying that energy, then it could represent them too. So for instance, if you're not necessarily maybe married to somebody, but y'all are living together, y'all are playing that role, then that energy can show up as that basically. You know, even if it's not written in stone. So just keep that in consideration. You know what I mean? Keep that in consideration. So let's continue on. If you have a third marriage, that would be seen from the 11th house. So then if you have a fourth marriage, God forbid, you know what I mean? I don't know, you might need to give it up if it comes out of fourth marriage. I don't know, maybe it's not meant to be. You know what I mean? But, you know, shout out to those who are married if they make it to four. So the fourth marriage would be seen from the first house basically. So we'll put fourth marriage or spouse. Right? So fourth marriage, basically. Alright. Continuing on, if there's a fifth marriage, you know what I mean, which we don't want, but it'll be the third house. Alright, so yeah. So let's talk about grandparents, right? We're going to start with your grandmother on your mother's side, right? So this would be seen from the 7th house, right? So now why is it seen like that? Why is it that the 7th house represents your mother's mother? Okay? So let's come back to you. You're always seen by the first house. This is you. The first house represents you in your birth chart. So 4 spaces away represents your mother. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your mother right here, right? So 4 spaces away from your mother would be her mother, basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we got your grandma, your mother's mother. 4 spaces away from your mother. So 7th house is where you find out your grandmother's energy, right? If we want to think about your father's mother, which would be your grandmother on his side, on the paternal side, look at the 12th house, because this is 4 spaces away from the father, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 12th house is your pops or your father's mother, right? 12th house will indicate her, right? So let's look at the grandfather. Let's start with the mother's father. So this would be 9 spaces away, because the father is seen 9 spaces away from the person that we're inquiring about. So this should be the 12th house too, I think, but we'll see. Let's count it up. So 9 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep. And this would be the mother or mom's father or pop, right? And the reason, again, if we want to understand why, is because, okay, the first house represents you. 9 spaces away from that represents your father, right? So if we go back to the mother, we're counting 9 spaces away from her. That'd be her father. All right. So let's do the same thing for your father. 9 spaces away from him would be an example of your grandfather, which would be his father, right? So let's count away, and it should be the 5th house. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, 5th house. So 5th house is a representation of that. Let's talk about your children. First child is seen by the 5th house, right? If you have children, they're going to be seen by that 5th house. 7th house, second child. And then we continue to follow the order. The next house after this one, after 8, would be 3rd child if you have one. 4th child, which is house 11. Right? And if you have a 5th child, it'll be seen from house 1. So 11th house. 11th house talks about stepchildren. Again, if you have more than one stepchild, you go every other one. So the second stepchild would be seen from the 1st house. Right? This is the 1st stepchild, the 11th house. Now, why would the 11th house be stepchildren, basically? The reason being is because again, let's start with you. Your house 1, this represents the self, right? You as an individual. 5 spaces away represents your child. So if we want to talk about stepchildren, back to that 11th house, again, we said this is the 1st stepchild. The reason being is because your first marriage or your spouse is seen from house 7. So 5 spaces away, which represent children, would be the 11th house. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is your spouse's child, right? And then it's interesting in terms of the dynamic because 5th house is your child, 11th house is your spouse's child or stepchildren, 5th opposite of the 11th. So it's interesting in terms of that dynamic. 9th house is in-laws. Reason being is because your 3rd house represents your relatives, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, things of that nature. House 3. So from your spouse's perspective, 3 spaces away would be her or his brothers and sisters, basically. So these could be like in-laws right here in this 9th house.
Now, since we on this 9th house, one thing to note is that it can also represent gurus or teachers or people that are like educators. This can be a pastor to your high priest. It could be an imam, rabbi, whatever you want to call it.
6th house represents pets, your relationship towards pets. So if you have any pets, looking at 6th house, of course you got to know the energy of the signs, what they represent, negatives and positives of each sign. And then you also need to know, again, the energy of the planets as well, because again, like I said, that's going to flavor the energy.
Another thing the 6th house is going to show up as, it's going to be your co-workers, as well as if you're a boss or something, it could be employees. So this can be your subordinates. I know in ancient times they looked at this house also as slaves as well. Now, also from the 10th house, we see that we can have authority figures such as elders. This can also be just people that are more mature than you or higher ups in your field. This can also be bosses or supervisors in terms of authority figures, right? So keep that in mind.
Of course, 12th house is hidden enemies in terms of their energy. And then the 7th house is open enemies. So yeah, that's just a couple people. Of course it gets deep, but in terms of derivative houses, these are different areas where you can see certain people, and then of course you would turn the wheel, read their 12 areas of life if you decide to do so. So, that's just the energy. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe out here, and we're gonna continue on our grind. Peace.